What's up, everybody? Jay Heat, Sports Media, coming at y'all again with that fire as always. Giving y'all the hot sports topics as best I can. Been in some group sports chats lately. A lot of talk about LeBron James and the super teams that he has put together and the era that he has quote unquote created over time because of the fact that he puts these loaded teams together ever since the Miami Heat, or as they used to say, the Heatles. People are a little too hard on the man, though, in my opinion. If you really look at his time and his era and what he had to deal with at the time, you have to really pay attention to when he came through the league. Take yourself back. Remember the fact that when he was in the ninth grade, when he's actually remembering and watching basketball in 2000, this guy watched a Los Angeles Lakers team that already was pretty stacked with a Nick Van Exel, a Eddie Jones, Shaquille O'Neal, and also a Kobe Bryant. Decided to add a Glenn Rice to the team and pick up for coach Phil Jackson, maybe arguably the greatest coach of all time, even at that time, in order to win a championship. And they did. At the time, if you go from the 2000 season all the way to 2010, when Mr. James first made that decision in order to go to South Beach, he watched that happen. He watched the team be so successful that they didn't even need Glenn Rice, one of the greatest shooters of all time. They moved on from him, and with just Shaq and Kobe, who arguably were the two best players in the league, they continued to win titles. And to beat them, what did it take? Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Manu Ginobili, and also Tony Parker and the crew. Loaded team of Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers to be, all because of great GMs, the Lakers organization and the Spurs organization. And from there, the Lakers had to one-up this team. What did they do? They added Gary Payton, Karl Malone, Hall of Famers already at the time, still great players in the league, in order to try to get rid of the Spurs, who were a dominant team and had just won a title in 2003. And from there to beat them for the Eastern Conference, where LeBron James eventually ended up, and at this time was in the league, the Eastern Conference, as they used to call it back then, in order to try to compete. The Detroit Pistons, who were a great team led by Rick Carlisle and his group of coaches, had to still add to a team of all-stars. Rasheed Wallace, who was also an all-star, a 4 all-star team, one of the greatest starting fives in the history of basketball, and the best defensive team maybe in the history of basketball, just to win a title. That only lasted a year. That's how the East snuck in their first championship in that 2000 to 2010 era. From there, the Spurs continued to win, and Shaq moved over to the Miami Heat, where he guaranteed a championship when he joined a young Dwayne Wade. And that was how the Miami Heat had to win a team, by getting arguably the best player in the league at the time right in the conversation with Tim Duncan and Allen Iverson to win a title then. And from there, you got the Spurs continuing to win titles and the East not being involved at all. They had to bring the Boston Celtics Big Three together in order to get themselves yet another title in 2008 with Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen. And at that point, they won a title. That was a team that your Mr. LeBron James was playing against, with guys like Boobie Gibson and Eric Snow and people like that in order to win a title. And it wasn't happening. So when he wanted to compare himself to the greats in the league like Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Kobe, Shaq, Duncan, and all those guys, he realized he needed more help. So from there, he made his decision at the time, because the Eastern Conference had only won 3 titles: a stacked Pistons team, 4 All-Stars, Shaq, D. Wade, and also Pat Riley coaching the team, and then the big three Celtics, the only three that got in. So when you all get on LeBron James for deciding he need to take that extra step, when he looks in the mirror and knows what his potential is, knowing that he was the chosen one supposedly by Sports Illustrated and had to live up to those expectations, for him to go and ask his guy Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh to come to Cleveland. They didn't want to come to Cleveland, so they went to Miami to form a team just to compete in a league that was built on dynasties by great GMs in an era of dynasties. Mr. LeBron James did what he needed to do in order to compete and in order to start a new era and a player movement, a freedom movement, entrepreneur movement, of player empowerment, something that hadn't been seen since Oscar Robinson fought for free agency for guys to be able to go to their own team and do what they wanted to do. So make sure you remember that type of stuff when you criticize the guy for starting something that has actually helped to benefit the league and to get us into a time where we have these great teams together that are similar to teams we even saw in the 80s. People getting on LeBron for Carmelo Anthony coming over to his team along with Russell Westbrook and others. Don't forget about Bill Walton, who already was a finals MVP and a champion that came over to the Celtics for one of the greatest teams of all time in 1986 to win a championship. They celebrated that. Why not celebrate this brother? Make sure you catch me, J Heat Sports Media. Like, subscribe, or hate. Catch me on TikTok, Instagram, as well as YouTube, of course. And I will holler at you next time.